Um, Dan is a unique cat, and he one thing, he has a ton more of publications I'll ever have in my life. But what's more important about Dan is he's a wonderful person, and one of the reasons why I was excited to have Dan on was that very often in your life you're going to be dealing with people that are better than you, that have different skills, and that basically make you better by surrounding yourself with people like that. And Dan's pedigree is sort of impeccable. He comes from just incredible training at places like Columbia, Duke, and Johns Hopkins, and he spent the most recent part of his career at Johns Hopkins, becoming arguably one of the preeminent spine cancer surgeons in the world. And he's developed a reputation for taking unique approaches to removing previously incurable tumors of the spine. And spine is a huge component of neurosurgery now. And Dan is one of the next generations of neurosurgical leaders. And when I trained, and Dan's a few years younger than me, we're sort of in the same generation, but when I was a resident, there was actually zero chairmen that were spine neurosurgeons, and now Dan is one of one of the first. There are just a smattering of chairs in the country that come from a spine background. So I asked Dan to tell you all a little bit about his journey. Dan, I'll leave it up to you to how to get started, and then I may jump in and ping you some questions about how you got into this. How you made the decision to become a neurosurgeon, what your expectations are for this next generation of your career, and then we can go from there. And Ashley, you can field some questions after maybe 30 or 40 minutes, however the timing goes. But thanks so much for joining us, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Oh, great. Well, thank you, Dr. Langer and Ash and everyone else for attending. Just to congratulate you all, this is disruptive in a good way. Depending on who you're talking to, if you're a little kid, being disruptive is bad, right? The kid is screaming at the table of dinner or something. But after you're about 18 years old or after about 15 years old, being disruptive is a good thing. So just remember that when your friends say, why and I'm disruptive. Sciubba said it's good. And one of the biggest disruptors or troublemakers, if you will, in a good way, is Dr. David Langer. So he's constantly trying to reinvent how people interact and how people derive value from each other. And this is what the world needs. And this is why it's so inspiring to be here and for all of you to be part of this. I really think you're going to look back on history even 10 years from now and say, yeah, I guess people do more of this stuff, but we were like the first to do this. We were like the first to really have these type of interactions. And I remember being on the ground floor. So it's so inspiring to me just because I have a little bit more experience and I can see the pattern happening where Dr. Langer and all of you involved are really setting the pace car, are really being the vanguard. And so I guess I'll just take that and kind of go back to what I think is important for young people. This is the deal. You're all leaders. I say this to my team. I say this to my children. And I say this to Dr. Langer, who's an exceptional leader, international leader, is we're all leaders. And what does that mean? Does that mean that you have to be the lead singer in the band? Does that mean you have to be in the front and talking at the business table? No. It can mean that, but that's not only what it means. And I'll tell you that I would suggest this to everyone who's thinking about this themselves. This paradigm, for me, it's been easy to lead down because I always had someone younger than me, right? I could say, oh, I was a senior in high school, and I could tell the junior, to what to expect, and that's a little bit easier, right? Because you can be a role model, or you can, just tell them what's going on. Leading up is the second one. Leading up is the second hardest one. What does that mean? Well, you have a boss or a teacher or a professor, and you got to say, I'm trying to do this project, and I'm hoping that if I do this, and they say, oh, it's a good idea, Dan, go for that. And you say, okay, I kind of led them to help me. And you're not the leader of the classroom, but maybe you're helping them help you. And for me, the hardest one, and the one that I struggle with every day, is leading across. And leading across is leading amongst your peers. And so this is, I think, what sets everyone apart who really is a good leader. And I'm still working on this daily, because that means, when you're a senior or a junior, you can always look down and say, you're just a junior, you're just a freshman, I can tell you what to do. And when your boss tells you to do something, your teacher tells you to do something, you say, I just did it, and I did it in a good way, and they patted me on the head. but leading across, whether it be your peers, whether it be your coworkers, whether it be your classmates, is hard. It's hard. And the thing is, the better that, and the reason it's hard is because you don't know anything to each other. You're in the same boat. You're in the same lane, if you will. And so it's hard to say, hey, how can I help that? And what I'm suggesting to all of you is to embrace each of these, because this is really what makes your community better, is when that peer says to you, when that classmate says to you, I really like Ash. She just helps the club. She helps the thing. She is lead. Now, does she have to be the person who thought of every good idea? No. Does she have to be the person who, takes to the attendance in the meeting? No. But someone who is making the ecosystem stronger. And if you use that as your one of your North Stars, you'll always find wonderful people to hang out with, and your stock will always go up. So if you like to be with people, it's going to be awesome. If you just want your own stock to go up, it's going to be awesome. It really is the way that you do that. And the second thing I'll say, and then I'll take a breath, is that always embrace your passions in this way. In other words, I always say to people, when there's a work or a project that has to be done, we have to be convincing of why it's important to come to that, versus watching TikTok or, going for a run or, getting a beer. And the issue is that if you can find ways to embrace people passionately, like the people who are spending time on this versus doing something else, this is what you guys did. People are on this instead of doing something else, which means that you're providing value. And if you always think that way, you always think, how do I get people excited, or how do I engage? And you say, well, I'd rather be drinking a beer, watching TikToks, then we have to change this format, because this is not as interesting as that. It has to be better. If for example, I have a faculty member who says, I'm just not inspired to come to work. I'd rather sit at home. There's something that's going wrong with what we're giving them at work, with what they're asking them to do, what we're trying to help them within their lives. And that's on me and on the rest of the team. So I think I'll stop there, but I want you to think about two things. One is leading people that you get, like, I got to lead my little friend or my younger friend, but also leading your peers in a way that is supportive. And then the second thing is find passion in everything you do, because we are on this earth for a very short time, and we got to make it interesting for those around us that we care about, and for ourselves. And I'll take a breath there and see if that shook any trees out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you live your words, and it's deeds, not words. And I think getting to know you, and Dan and I got to know each other on Zoom for a year before we actually met in person. By the time we met in person, we knew each other pretty well, I thought. And you are who you appear to be, and that's and it's admitted. Dan is my boss, and so I have to. You have to when you have someone who you have to lead through him and manage up. And that's been an honor and a privilege in the time you've been here. So what sort of what got you excited about this, the idea of doing this new job of yours that you have? How did this start? Where did you always know you wanted to be a chairman? And if not, what led to the decision making of the taking on leadership? And I don't know how much you know about Dan, but he, in addition to having numerous publications, over 400 actually, he just got an MBA from Wharton. And I always tell that it's not even an apocryphal story; it's real. When I was at Penn, in my medical school class, there were two people getting combined MD MBAs, and we made fun of them. It's like, this one of those. We were like, I'm the real doctor. I'm saving lives. And we used to give these people doing MBAs because they were more focused on money. Well, the whole table's been flipped now. And obviously, you've been, front and center. You're an academic guy. You're very driven by being a great doctor, which you've done. So take us through that transition from, how that happened. Was it as a medical student, as a resident? How did you end up as a neurosurgeon, the MBA, the leadership? Where did this all congeal? And primarily to give the students here an idea of how to get a framework about the ambition that if you're taking 3 hours out on a Friday morning in the middle of summer to be here, you probably have some ambition in you. And so this is an ideal audience to hear from Dr. Sciubba about his thinking.
Oh, thank you for that question. And thank you again for the kind comments as well. So yeah, I'll just tell you a quick a quick overview, and maybe some of these things you can relate to. So, I thought I was well-rounded growing up. I played sports and I liked music a lot, but I'm a little bit of a geek, right? I really like science, and I really liked medicine, and I really liked the idea that someone could do surgery. So for me, I think I got turned onto that quickly. And I think it was the immediacy that if I went to medicine, which I love science and biology, that there would be some immediacy that, as opposed to, say, giving a blood pressure medicine and seeing you in 6 months and seeing if your blood pressure went down, you could actually remove a tumor from someone by skill and by training and by studying. And if you did it right, the patient would say, thank you. And oh my God, maybe you cured me of cancer. I mean, I still don't think there's a better, internal high-fiving. And for people who are thinking about neurosurgery, this in my mind, I'm obviously biased, but you asked me a question, so I'm going to give my biased answer, is I don't think there's anything cooler to do in the world. I don't think there's anything cooler to do in the world. Whether it be because it's challenging, whether it's because you got to work at it, and then you got to, these things are never perfect, and you can always have a limitless chance to interact with the brain and the spine and the peripheral nerves and the spinal cord. All these questions that are unanswered. It's limitless, thought provoking. And then you got to do it, and then you got to do it well. And then the patients say to you, this is not, I'm not getting my nails done or getting my hair cut. This is like everything to me. This is my mind. This is my vision. This is my ability to walk and talk and interact with my loved ones. I mean, if you help people in the smallest way in this field, you're going to heaven. I mean, you're going to heaven. I don't know what else to say. So that's really like 99% of it. But then what happens, and I'm an older guy, what happens is you start getting decent at that. And maybe you start going, so I think I'm good at, baking a cake once a week. But, and people say it's a good cake, and people have had it, like it, and they say you should, give this cake to others. And it's actually sometimes hard to transition from being a doctor who does, sees one patient at a time to scaling that and saying, well, if I could, I'm so glad I found you, Dr. Sciubba, but no one knows who you are, or you're in the middle of this little tiny cubby hole somewhere and no one can find you. And so what happened to me is the same thing that happened to you, David, is that in medical school, when I was at Columbia, my roommate was an MBA and MD. And I remember saying, like, what the heck's with that? Like, why are you doing an MBA? Like, I'm a learned doctor. I'm a scientist in training. I am very arrogant a little bit, but I was in my 20s, and maybe I'm still arrogant, who knows? But I was very arrogant about being a doctor. Oh my God. Like, we are doing God's work. And what do you want to be, an investment banker? Nothing against investment bankers. But back in the 90s, that's what business school in Columbia meant, is you were going into banking. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness. And I think what's changed for all of us is that I think business has now become a little bit more holistic and expansile. And what I think everyone can agree with is everyone, or not everyone, a lot of people really love entrepreneurship. They love new ideas. I know Dr. Langer is a creator of so many creative things. I tell him he's the most creative person I hang out with. And every time I have an idea, he has like 10. And that entrepreneurship, that idea, I think, is more of what's happened in business school over the last few years, of people saying, hey, can I start a Tesla? Can I start a TikTok? So that's more exciting. People can relate to that. The other thing is, as I already said, and I won't go into it again, is that corporations are a little bit better, or traditionally have been a little bit more focused on bringing people through leadership. While medicine was always, maybe the person who's the most senior was the boss, and maybe the person who did the most surgeries was the boss, or maybe the person who's been around the longest was the boss. And what we find now is that sometimes people within that group who are quiet leaders need to be propelled, and people who are seemingly in the front need to give up some of that presence. And so part of me going to business school is to and I use this term, this is my term now, it might change, is how do we impact and influence others in positive ways? So for me, I thought I was influencing people really in positive ways, definitely me personally and my patients. And then I thought, wait, I figured out how to do something. And if I can share this with the masses, we should. But the way it's set up is the patient comes and sees me in my office, and I do a surgery, and then I do another surgery. And maybe at the end of my career, I do a bunch of surgeries. But if we can find out something that, just like this, just like you all are doing and Dr. Langer's doing, he's got some great ideas. He's become one of my great friends and trusted friends. is that he's now taking something that I think he did something to individual students and individual residents and individual peers and inspires them daily. And maybe in one day, Dr. Langer sees 50 people, maybe sees 10 people. And at the end of the day, I bet 99% of those are going, man, that guy just like made my day better. But this interaction that we're doing today is more than 10 people. And when you get motivated, you're passing something on that you've thought about that maybe starts to me that none of us else have thought about. And then you're catapulting this into paying it forward into this giant network. And so for me, what I saw is I wanted to pivot. And so the chair job in terms of, do I always want to be a chair? Because that's something that comes up in neurosurgery, do you want to be a chair or not? That comes up for some reason in neurosurgery. We always seem to bring that up in issues. And I think the question is because, what do you want to do with your time? And so for me, being a chair was never the end goal. The end goal was, how can I have the greatest influence and really be entertained and inspired by more people, because I get bored easily. And this was one way to do it. But you know what? If tomorrow we took away that term chairperson, and I became something else like David Langer is, where I consider him, in some way the Pied Piper of motivating younger people and peers. Is that satisfying? Yes. I just didn't want to see one patient at a time anymore, because I felt like there was lack of value that was being transferred. And I wanted to be either stimulated myself more or help other people who I couldn't never meet, or across the country. And I think your generation out there, all you guys, this is what you've lived in. This is not what Dr. Langer and I grew up with. We had, I don't want to talk about how old we are, but I remember someone said to me when I was growing up, what's the biggest technological advancement? And I was like 15, I go, the electric garage door opener. And people, this just shows you how old I am, because I used to be the kid when it was raining, my parents would be like, open the garage door, and you'd run out and you'd open the garage door and you get rained on. I was also the person who turned the TV channel for my father when we turned it from channel 5 to channel 7, because we had about 9 channels. So but you guys grew up in an area where you can actually become friends with someone in Europe or Asia just by having connections through the internet and through social media. And that is both a very, very empowering thing. It's a very, very, you have to be very responsible with this too, because it is a very powerful tool and has a lot of leverage. So use it for good. Use it to connect with people. Behave yourself if you can when you're at a low point, so you don't send out something where you really hurt someone's feelings, right? But this is something that you've grown up with. So in medicine, Dr. Langer and I'm going to throw him in my bag. He's a geek too. He's a brilliant surgeon. He's a brilliant thinker. And sometimes we want to share that with other people in form. So for me, that transition from just being a doctor to being, an MBA as well, was driven by greater influence.
You want to ask some of the questions from the audience, Ash? Someone's asking about, go ahead, Ashley.
So someone asked, first of all, everyone's saying that they want to start every day with a Dr. Sciubba speech. That's how they want to start their morning. So you made it.
I try to do that every day. He's too busy though. I can only talk to him like once a week.
I only get to see David through formats like this. So,
Exactly.
I have to do this.
But Olivia asked, how do you manage being a leader/chairman while maintaining a good relationship with your colleagues? Do you ever have disagreements with the people who report to you? And how do you go about handling?
Yeah, no, you nailed it. I mean, that question is like, can I actually ask that question to you and you can tell me the answer? Because that is the question. That is the hard question, right? So, okay, that's it. I don't have an answer. No, what I would suggest, and I've actually thought about this a lot, and these are two things. One, actually, let me step back a second and kind of embrace what makes us all who we are. We all think we know we all have an idea of what we think is the right thing, right? Like maybe I should do this more. Maybe I should eat more vegetables. Maybe I should do this. And then there's natural strengths that you have, so maybe I should, but maybe you're naturally more musical. So you deal with things by relaxing and thinking about connecting with people through music. Maybe you're a sports person and you connect with them by going on a run with them or playing a round of golf with you. Maybe you read things and you share books together. So the issue is, what I'm getting at is that as much as I want to be a great leader, I have to be honest to myself. And I have some skill sets that I think are good. And I have some weaknesses that I just don't think I'm ever going to be as good as Ash is at something, or David Langer's good at something, because I'm just not that good at that, And so what I've learned is that one thing that I'm unfortunately or fortunately good at is being very transparent and direct. And that is, as you guys will learn as you go through this, every personality trait you have if pushed to the extreme, is bad, right? So you say, oh, that person is really, really, smart at this. And then you say, but if they're too smart, they become arrogant. Or this person's really, really efficient. Well, if they're too efficient, they cut corners. So for me, I've been direct. It's a weakness and a strength. And the long answer now distilled into the short answer is, one of the things that sets me free is transparency with my peers. And so we might disagree fundamentally on something, but if I'm honestly saying, listen, this is where I'm coming at this from, this is what I see, either educate me if I'm not educated, or tell me where you think I'm wrong, or tell me how you think I can help. But I'm bearing my thoughts on this to you, and I'm bearing my emotions to this on you. You don't have to tell every single thing about, when I was a little kid, I got made fun of. You don't have to share everything in your life. Only share what's relevant. But what I do is with my peers as a leader, where you sit there and say, I want them to be on my team, and they might be going, oh, I got to meet with Sciubba. He's my boss, and oh, he's so annoying. How do we connect? I sit there and say, listen, I know you want to do this in your career, and I think I know you want to do this. Tell me what you want. This is kind of what I need from my side. You got to show up to work. You got to be nice. You got to, try to propel people in the right direction. I bet there's a 95% overlap. I think the problem where people get into things is lack of communication, lack of transparency, and that arrogance that says, I know Ash, and I know what makes you tick, and this is what you should do. And you sit there and go, he has no freaking idea about me. And now I'm offended. And actually, he told me to do something I don't even want to do. And the meeting's over. So I think part of the issue is going, Ash, I'm going to be honest with you. I need like 3 things from you. You got to be nice. You got to not swear during this video thing and make fun of any individual person. And then you got to try your best to inspire people. That's all I ask. And you go, Dr. Sciubba, that's all I want to do. And in fact, I was thinking about 5 other things. And then when there's a problem, but Dr. Sciubba, you talk too much. When you answer a question, give us 3 words. Don't give us 10 sentences. And I say, thank you. I didn't realize that was an issue. I will do better. It's based on respect, trust, and transparency. You're not going to agree completely on things, but that really solves a lot of problems when people disagree. You just go, this is where I'm coming from. And sometimes people go, that's exactly not what I thought you were thinking. And it really helps with communication. So people always say communication should be better. Communication should be better. I actually think proximal to that, upstream of that, is be transparent, be honest. You don't have to share everything. I always say only share what you feel comfortable sharing, but you have to be honest in life, because that's how we get things done together. So that's one. And the reason I say this about you got to know yourself is because that's easy for me. It's also a potential weakness, because sometimes I tell people, this is kind of, actually, a lack of a better term. My wife, who I adore, people say, well, do you tell it, you don't like your wife's new haircut? Do you tell, are you that transparently honest? Are you that? And I say, yes and no. I'll say, honey, I don't like that dress, but because I love the other dress. I mean, you don't have to be mean when you're transparent. I see Ashley rolling her eyes going, holy smokes, Sciubba, how is your marriage doing? Okay. And the answer is that if I sit there and say, I think you're doing great over here, this is weaker, it's still honest without being offensive. So you have to be careful how you offend people, but sometimes they like hearing that. They go, that's what I asked you. Are we taking this? Are we taking this route or that route? Are we going with this plan or that plan? And you got to be gentle when you tell them that, their pet project is not ideal, but you got to say, but these are the parts that make it really, really good. So I hope I didn't offend anyone. That wasn't meant to be a sexist comment, of course, but I wanted to be just honest, that people say, are you honest to everyone, even your wife, who's really my boss? And I said, yeah, but I'm supportive, so I hope that didn't offend anyone. I apologize if it did.
I think you're okay. That I've always heard of the compliment sandwich, where it's positive, maybe the negative, and then another positive. But this is a question personally for me. So Dr. Langer was speaking with us, a bunch of the other students, and was talking about how he wants to be a physician who's living in the future. And I thought that was a really inspirational thing to say. And I feel like both of you really are that kind of physician and person who's living in the future. Can you speak a little bit to how you see something and see a way of doing things when it's never been done before, and how do you approach going after something when other people might not see your vision and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. I would first start off by saying I'm not the one with the greatest ideas, so we have to be humble with that. When you say not everyone sees my vision, I would argue that my vision is informed by everyone else in the room. And so I would challenge you to think this way, and this will give you two. I want everyone to think about this, and hopefully this inspires some of you. And if it doesn't, don't worry about it. But this is something that helps all of us. If you constantly strive to surround yourself by people who know more than you, and lack of a better term, people say surround yourself by people smarter than you. I think that's a little bit, that says that smart people and not smart people, but people who know more than you is probably a gentler way to say that. You will always win. It's hard because all of us want to be recognized as an expert, but the humility that comes with you saying, hey, I need to learn from people around me. Now, what do we do that? In school, we're basically doing that all the time because our teachers know more than us. But as you kind of go out into the other world, you go, and you guys do it. I mean, I remember when I first started working with students back when I was a young attending, and I gave the student a project, said, can you go to the library and look up all these journal articles? And it was like, we had, PubMed was becoming popular. And then he came back in like an hour, was like, it's all done. I'm like, no, I gave you a project for like the whole day and to go to the library and Xerox journals. And he's like, yeah, I got it done. It's done. I was like, oh, shoot. And the issue is that in theory, I was his leader, but he was better at getting information than I was. So it doesn't have to be on everything. It just has to be on something. And so what happens is, so back to the question, if you want to try to do something innovative, I'm going to ask people that know more about it than I do, which is pretty much everybody if the idea is new. So if you're sitting there and you're trying to create this format, I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start. I'd ask you two how to do this. I'd ask others how to do this and say, hey, we need to do something like that. Let's get them in a room. Now, again, back to my other comment. Why is it worth Ash and David Langer talking to me for these 5 minutes? It's got to be worth it to them too. So you have to be able to inspire people and say, hey, I think this is we think this is a great idea. You guys are all smarter than me. If you give me 5 minutes of your time, we can create something and connect some dots that no one else has connected. And then just that's the fun of life. That's the spice of life. You just people start getting jazzed when something's new and innovative. And trust me, or the lack thereof is boring. Lack thereof is boring. I say life is short and we're on this earth for a short time. And I think the reason is because time flies when you're having fun. So for me, I'm always sitting there going, man, I didn't do enough today. I need 25 hours in the day. I think it's because I'm having fun. When I have to kill time, I get very frustrated because I'm going, you mean I'm waiting for an airplane, or I'm sitting in a parking jam. I get really, really cagey because we should be always trying to maximize our engagement. That doesn't mean that if you're not fun, disengage. That doesn't mean that there's not delayed gratification. That doesn't mean that you have to study so that you can learn something. It means that you should be engaged and helpful. So back to your question, how do we advance and how do we inspire? Well, we have to surround ourselves by people smarter than us. And that finally gives us humility. And humility is so powerful, guys, so powerful. And I'm not the best at it because I'm a neurosurgeon. By definition, you go to a cocktail party, people are like, oh my goodness, you're a neurosurgeon. And you're like, oh, well, thank you. Can you please clear the way to the hors d'oeuvre tray? Like there's a little bit of the societal, you're a doctor, but humility goes a long way. And the classic example of that is if you're walking out of a building and you say, after you, and someone says, no, after you, and you say, no, after you. And you're both sitting there trying to be the right person. On the other hand, if you're looking for a cab and someone cuts you off to get a cab, you might actually, body check them out of the way, because all of us respond to positive and negative energy. So if you start with saying, I want to learn from everyone, people go, but you're the smartest person in the room. No, I want to learn from you. And it becomes this very, very supportive thing. And people go, that person's a good person. They're always like elevating others. And what happens when you're elevating others, they put you they respect you more, and they think of you as a leader. And it's it's reverse psychology. The more you tell people how big a deal you are, the more you kind of make yourself smaller. And the more you sit there and say, and that's hard to do. And trust me, I have a hard problem with that, because sometimes I want to tell people, listen, this is how we should do it. And the more I do it, the more it falls through my fingers. And other times when I say, I think I'm screwing this up, people say, no, you're okay. Just keep going. We got your back. And so think about that too. And maybe it relates to you. Maybe it hasn't related to you that yet, because I think when I was your age, I thought I knew a lot of things and I wanted to tell everybody about it. And now I'm going, the more I know, the less I understand. So think about humility in that way too,
Reminds me of a video I saw on YouTube that's supposed to be really popular. I'm going to play it. Is that okay?
Go for it.
You just reminded me of this. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Hold on a second. I have to share my screen.
While he's doing that, even though you answered that, Dr. Sciubba, you were like, I'm not the best at humility either. It's like, that was just a humble way of saying that. So.
Good mate, can I get you a drink?
Yeah, something soft. I'm driving. Parking's an absolute nightmare around here, isn't it? Had to reverse into the tiniest of spaces. Still, I managed it. I mean, parking's not exactly brain surgery, is it? And I should know.
Why is that? Are you a doctor?
Careful, not a doctor. I'm a brain surgeon. Big difference. Big difference. Yeah, I actually know a joke about this. What's the difference between a doctor and a brain surgeon? One's not exactly brain surgery. The other is brain surgery. What do you guys do?
I'm an accountant.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I could do with an accountant. Filling in those tax forms can get really confusing, can't it? Still, it's not exactly brain surgery, is it? I mean, brain surgery, believe me, is very complex. Are you an accountant too?
No, I work for a charity.
Oh, that's a very selfless job, isn't it? I really admire you. I don't think I could ever do what you do. I say that because it's emotionally draining, not because it's hard. I mean, it's not exactly brain surgery, is it? Which, as a brain surgeon, is what I do.
Lionel, here's your drink. Lionel's a brain surgeon, you know. Yeah, he mentioned it. Oh, Jeff, they keep you late at the Space Centre.
As always.
Food round. Have you met Lionel?
No, hello, Lionel.
So, Jeff, how do you earn a crust?
I'm a scientist. I work mainly with rockets. It's pretty tough work. What do you do?
Well, I don't mean to boast, but I'm a brain surgeon.
Brain surgery? Not exactly rocket science.
Sorry, Dan, had to show that.
I remember that one, and that nails it, right? That nails it. And I remember seeing that and thinking it was hilarious because that's happened. But the other side of it is that you could see the people looking and getting disengaged.
Very good. Oh no! At what you do. Yeah, well.
You could see the people getting disengaged. I mean, it's a joke, and I remember that skit. I love that skit, but it shows people getting disengaged. I mean, on the other hand, if people say, I don't, what do you do? And you actually truly can learn from them. They want to tell you too. And then, so, I don't have to explain the skit, but you nailed it. That's the story. And so if you can do that on a daily basis, now, when you're young, and I'll be the first to admit this, when you're young, you're still figuring out your identity. And, I have 2 high schoolers and a middle schooler, and I see this daily, right? I see this like, oh, there's so much pressure to figure out what I am. So you guys aren't expected to know who you are and lead in every situation, but to be honest with your peers and to be supportive and to be humble doesn't matter. You can do that every day. And that comes off. So, there's this thing as the kids, like, my daughter's applying for college soon. And, the question is, how are you different? Then it's almost a screwed up application process, because it's like, you have to show why you're individually so much better or different than all the other applicants. While in reality, the way to do that would be to be selfless and to be supportive of teams. So there's almost this weird application where you're like, the reason I'm so great is because I'm such a good team player. And you're like, is that contradiction? It's this like crazy thing. We have to pat ourselves on the back. And this happens at work. What did you do to make the hospital better? And you say this, and they say, no, but now we're going to talk about your numbers, you specifically. And they go, I thought I was a team member. I sacrificed for my players. I sacrificed for my partners. Did that show up in my individual account of what I did? Well, we're not talking about what you said. We're talking about you specifically. So we're a little bit two-faced when we do this, and we all have to work on this. But if we really want a team thing, we should be rewarding people for being team players. And so I get a kick out of the college application, because if you're extremely esoterically, intrinsically unique, you sometimes beat the whole system and you win the system. And I'm going, I don't know if that's what we want. I don't know if that's really what we want, is these super, super, super specialized people. Now, why do they want that? Because when they make a class, they want the whole class to look like an orchestra. So they want an oboist and they want a tuba player. But sometimes being that tuba player, if you only know the tuba, life is boring. So I feel for you. I feel for you younger folks, because you're still going through your identity. And I know you struggled with that. But no matter what, one of your foundations should be to be a team player and to be humble with your peers. You'll get more. I guarantee you'll get more than you give. I guarantee if you give, you'll receive more. That old adage is true.
One of the things about business school is I think you get exposure to that as part of the sort of the cultural legacy of MBA school. And I agree with you. Medical school is not baked into the curriculum, certainly not yet. I think that like we talked earlier in this course and Brain Turns and Last Drills about North Star and Gold Star stuff. And I think that some of it, you have to really work at that. I mean, you know that you have to do certain things. I mean, if you tell these kids, oh, don't worry about your MCAT scores, it's all going to be okay. You don't worry about your grades, just help everybody out. You know, that it's actually not true. I mean, there is an element of Gold Star you need in order to be successful, but also to have a parallel image of yourself. See, do something that's innovative or creative or collaborative, and then measure the feedback on both and see what you get more benefit from. And you have to do the Gold Star things to develop a platform for later success. But a guy like you, or I feel like I'm like that, once you break through and you've got your platform, then you can start to differentiate a little bit and choose where your North Star is. So what are you looking as your North Star now? What's now that you've solved this kind of inner conflict that we go through, and you obviously went even further and got an advanced degree, what are some of the things that you didn't learn in medical school that you learned as an MBA, and how are you thinking about that? And what's that thing you're looking for in the next, say 10 years? What's that focus you're going to have?
Yeah, no, great question, David. I do want to amplify your comment to clarify, and I think you nailed it, is that please don't take from this, we all walk down the street and hold hands and skip to the same beat. And then you say, did you learn your studies? Did you get good grades? You say, Dan, I thought you told me to just like be a team player, and I'm just like telling people, I'm singing songs and having a good time. The reason I think I came from that to David's comment is great. You should have both, is because I was that super ambitious guy growing up in college, wanting to win every race that I ran and getting an A on every paper. And if there's extra credit, why didn't I get an A plus? And at some point, you get those grades and you're proud of yourself, and you realize, oh, I'm kind of like in a rat in a race. So you do have to. So when I talk to my students and residents, I say, you gotta take time to do well on that boards test. You gotta take time to do. I mean, just take time off this other stuff. We won't pound you, but you got to do this. Like, you got to nail this. You got to know this stuff, right? Of course. Good. In the meantime, thank you so much for leading the student group on that. So it's got to be both. You nailed it. I wanted to make sure it's not about just, because obviously I would be disingenuous if I said I got all these advanced degrees because I was, just being a nice guy. It's really working hard and understanding, though, that when you work hard, you work with others. In terms of the second part of the question that you asked, which is, what is your goal and what did you learn? I said this to people recently, and I hope it comes out good, because again, I make mistakes when I'm too transparent or too blunt, but bear with me. This is a trusting group. I feel like now, you guys trust me, and you'll give me a break if I speak out of turn. But I'll tell you that I felt that medicine was the greatest calling. It was the coolest thing. It was the nicest thing. It was, ready for this, the morally right thing to do, to be a doctor, right? Like, it sounds almost arrogant to say that, right? Like the skit, like, I am doing stuff and you're a tax accountant. I'm like saving lives. I always thought that. What I found out, if you push that to the extreme, and it was the skit did a great job that Dr. Langer showed, is that I felt I learned more empathy in business school. Now, maybe you're like, what are you talking about? Business school? That's like, dog eat dog, cutthroat doctors. And the reason I did is because I just said this recently, and someone I saw in the chat said, "Where'd you go to school?" And I went to Wharton, which is where Dr. Langer went to school. He went to UPenn and training and stuff. So we are friends there too, because we're both Quakers in some way. So the issue is that when I was at Johns Hopkins for all these last 2 years, I said this to someone. I said, "What is a?" And I won't. I'm in my late 40s now, but when I see a 30-year-old. And a 30-year-old in neurosurgery is a resident, even though, you watch Grey's Anatomy, for those who don't know. You say, wait, when are they done? And how old are they? Well, they're still a resident in neurosurgery because that's a long residency. And I say, what does a resident call me when I say, hey, I have a question? They say, yes, sir, Dr. Sciubba, sir. What would you like, sir? What would you like me to do with a patient, sir? And I said, oh, this is good. It's back to that situation. Oh my goodness. But when I go to business school, what does a 30-year-old call me? They call me Dan. And what do they say to me when I don't understand? They say, Dan, we're all in the same meeting. We're all in the same study group. I think we need to look at that Excel spreadsheet. And I think that medicine, for all its benefits, was very hierarchical. And if you were just a little older than someone else, you could tell them what to do. And if you were a little bit more experienced, you could say, I'm the expert in the room. And I think, and that happens in corporations too, but the most corporations are now team-based. And there's got to be a flat hierarchy for people to be honest. And so what was interesting to me is I actually learned empathy because I learned everyone in the room has a voice and everyone in the room has a vote. Now, some votes are a little more valuable depending on what the content is, right? If this person's had more experience, maybe their input means more in that little project and they get more say because they're the ones who have more experience. So it's not completely democratic at times, as we all know. But in medicine, the benefit is you get to see the patients. The benefit is you get to save people. The benefits you get to take care of your families and young people and people who are vulnerable. The hierarchy, I think, is time for change. And so as I hope to add in the future between what I've learned and what I recently learned in business school is my hope is for the next generation of healthcare to be innovative and caring and to be collective, to be more collective. I saw a patient the other day and I said, what do you want to do? And he goes, that's why I came to see you. I go, no, I just gave you all the options. What do you want to do, man? And he goes, oh, I go, this is a conversation. I told you what's on the menu. You got to decide what you want to eat. And he started laughing. I go, I'm serious. I'm not telling you what to do. You have to take into your own issues in life. But I'm just telling you what I think, why I think the burger is good or bad, and why I think the salad is good or bad. You got to decide if you want a burger or salad for the reasons I said. And if I tell you the salad is old and wilted and the burger's prime beef, I might be biasing you, and you still might want the salad, and vice versa. But it has to be a conversation. Now, people are going to defer to Dr. Langer in a clinic 99.9% of the time, but I guarantee he's including them in that position. And so as we go together in a field and on individuals, understanding from each group how we can all add value. And once again, what does it do for everyone in the room? It engages them. It engages them and it makes them bring up things that no one else would. If I talk the whole time at our meetings, it's going to be an echo chamber. It's going to be, I'm just going to hear my own voice. And sometimes you like that, right? I read a book once that the most lovable term, the most lovable sound a human being can hear is the sound of their own name being called out. And this was a book about, you better learn people's names. You better freaking learn their names, because not only do they get bothered when you don't know their names, but actually they really do appreciate it. And I remember back to my wife when, we've been together for 20 years, married, been longer than that dating. And I was calling her babe, and I was calling her honey, and I was calling her, hey, and she goes, can you just call me Carrie? And I said, oh, she goes, I kind of like it when you call me by my name. I went, oh, and I read that. It's people like their name. They don't like, doctor this and that. So engaging with people where they are, knowing who they are, even for 5 minutes, you don't have to know their whole history, is so valuable in life. And it really matters when you're dealing with people with cancer, people who are scared, people who are dying, people who are losing their function. If you can connect on a human way, I'm getting chills even thinking about it myself. David and I have had family members who've passed, and we've seen a lot of people have hardship through our jobs. What we wouldn't give for, giving that person some reassurance a little bit. And the way you do this, whether it be business or patients or friends, is you engage with them and you let them be part of the solution. And so as we get better and better, and Dave knows this because I ask him for advice daily, and he gives it. And he also then responds with, hey, but now that I got you, I need advice. That is a much more functional and supportive way than preaching, even though I sound like I'm preaching right now. So I'll stop there and take a breath.
Go ahead, Ash.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you were about to say something. Thank you for being so real and honest and open with us, Dr. Sciubba. I think it does make it a lot more engaging, and it also is like a reminder that these people we hold in such high esteem are still just people. So I think that's
he's actually a robot.
Yes. Okay, my bad. Or did I assume? I think a lot of people have been wondering about how you balance your clinical time with your administrative duty, how your life has changed since you've taken on more of an administrative role.
Yeah, I'll answer that in two ways that come to mind. One is the word balance by definition, last time I checked, is actually hard. All right. So let's just be honest about this. When you say, how do you balance it? When you're on that balance beam, it's like you actually have to keep correcting. You can never let go of the wheel. Even if you're on a straight road, you let go of that wheel, and in about 10 seconds, you're off the road. So balance is hard. So let's just admit it, right? Let's be transparent and admit it. Balance is hard. I say I wish there were more hours in the day, and I actually have a guilt about spending more time with family or friends, and what I love to do, because I'm very achievement oriented, is I love projects. And David's heard me say this. People say, let's get coffee. And I say, I actually don't have time for coffee. And that sounds really rude, right? Or, hey, when we have chance, we'll get dinner. I said, my schedule's full. So you can't say that. That's just obnoxious. But what you sit there and say is, but if I have a project, we have to meet. And if we have to meet, let's meet over breakfast, or let's meet over lunch, or let's meet while running. And so all of a sudden you're like, did I just kind of do a mind trick? I'm actually talking business while going running and actually having a beer or whatever. So the answer is, sometimes you can combine your community with your work, with your family. People do this well, where they have family things with their business partners. They do trips. I mean, you can sometimes overlap, and that's hard. And you got to be careful. Sometimes you want to keep, back to Seinfeld, keep the spheres apart. I think that George Costanza had this. He's joining my spheres. It was like one friend group and another friend group. He never wanted to interact, and they became friends. And he's like, this is screwing up my thing. But you can be efficient. But balance is hard. The other thing about doing more administrative, does that take away clinical? The answer is, there's no doubt there is a trade-off in any decision you do. And whoever asked that question, I think a lot of people are thinking that, absolutely. And so the question I have is, one, if you can be super mathematic about it, you can make a maximization curve or a hyperplane with all the variables you want, and have this and say, this is where I got to spend 2 minutes a day doing this, 3.3 minutes talking with my, petting my dog. And, it could be really, really rigid. But the fact of the matter is that you're probably going to give up something for something else. And so for me, at my time, and this is about being innerly honest, and it's tough, right? When we look ourselves in the mirror, it's tough sometimes. And I suggest you do it. And I suggest you give yourself a little bit of slack. I think you give yourself a little bit of slack. Okay. You give yourself a little bit of forgiveness. We are all super achievers, I know, on this thing. Cut yourself a little bit of slack. And then you're going to go back about 5 minutes later to, I got to get my things done. I mean things done, but give yourself some slack. You need some empathy for yourself. And you have to be honest with yourself. And for me, what I found was that some of the things that I was spending 100 hours on a week, probably at 60, I was capped out on satisfaction. In other words, I was like, that last 40 hours was like kind of really, really, I don't know if it was worth it. And I'm not saying everything's fun, but I'm talking about work. I'm not talking about fun. I'm talking at work, something I was spending 40 hours on, I wasn't seeing benefits from it. And so for me, I kind of trimmed that back. And so the clinical is less. And I traded it with working with people. And let's give an example. I could be seeing a patient in clinic right now. I could be, and that would be very rewarding. Or I could be doing this platform where we get to engage, inspires me, gives me more energy for the month, gets to connect with people, maybe gets them to be a little more inspired or feel safe or feel supported. This was worth the trade-off of seeing a patient. Now, is that patient, God forbid, dying the second? I doubt it. They could be seeing a colleague of mine. They can be seeing a trusted a friend of mine. I say, hey, I can't do it right now, but I trust so-and-so to see you. But maybe this is something I'd be willing to trade this hour for. And so that is the balance. And where I am at my age will be different when I'm 10 years older from now. And it's definitely different than when I was your age. So you remember, again, people are different from each other, but we're also different as we go through life. So there is no status quo. There is no status quo, guys. If you think you finally found the spot and you're going to go on cruise control, everyone else is getting their cars to be faster. So they're changing, and then the road is changing, and then they're redoing the road. So, embrace that too. Don't be scared of that. Embrace the fear, embrace the scaredness, and then get over it. I always say to patients when they're dealing with something, I say, this is something, if you feel like you want to cry, cry. And they say, yeah, I feel really upset. I said, let it out. And then I said, and when you're done crying, we're going to make a plan. So let's enjoy, let that wash over you, but we're not going to sit here and cry for the rest of your life. We're going to do something to improve your life. So as you guys go through this, understand that you have to constantly go back and forth between, holy smokes, I need a break, and okay, I now got to stop, sucking my thumb and lying in the corner. I got to go down and persevere. And we need our friends and family to help us with that. David Langer has helped me with that. when I don't hope he didn't see me sucking my thumb in the corner one day, but in some ways I go, dude, this is driving me crazy. How are you going to help me with this? And he goes, I don't see it as a problem, man. I just do this. I was like, oh, and then he might say, but this is a big problem. I go, no, it's not as big a problem. And that is the benefit of trusting people and working with people.
The only thing I would add, I think that's really an amazing answer, is that you're all going to have your banana in the shower moment. I was teasing Dan the other day. He was, just got home at 10:30 at night, hadn't eaten all day. And nothing in life comes easy. And I remember when I was a resident, I was like getting up at 5 a.m, getting home at 2 a.m. And I would eat a banana in the shower. You were just like, the only way you could eat and go to sleep at the same, you said you eating and going to sleep at the same time. Nothing in life comes easy. There's no balance. You get to choose balance later on. Like, I'm lucky enough now, you have choices, but you have to build that base first. And nothing is more important than hard work. It doesn't mean it shouldn't be fun. It doesn't mean it shouldn't be collaborative. It doesn't mean it should be selfish. Just, you're going to have your banana shower once in a while, and that's okay. And I think that the balance comes in later when you have these larger choices about, am I going to get an MBA? Am I going to go take a new job and take a leadership position? Am I going to be an innovator? Then you have to start thinking, what am I going to take away? What's the give and take with this stuff? One of the students asked about the book Give and Take, by the way. I want to know if you've read it, by Adam Grant, which is a great book. But I think that's the point, Dan. I think you've demonstrated you've obviously had your banana in the shower already, and now you're starting to find the balance, and not so much time, but in your concepts, in your family, in your choices that you've made in your career. That's what I think is so important.
Thank you, David. And no, I think that this is we need to show support for each other. We're all ambitious, and so you have to work hard. There's no doubt. I actually, when I was a resident, I used to tell the students, and I got to bring it back to this old school now. I used to say there's three pillars of what I do. You gotta always have a plan in life. I don't care if the plan is I got to get a plan. I mean, there's got to be a plan. There's got to be a plan. Everybody wants a plan. Whether they're in a car accident, what do we do next? I got diagnosed with something. I got to apply to med school. You got a plan. There's 5 steps, 2 steps. Just put something down. Number 2 is be efficient with that plan. Be efficient with that plan. In other words, you say, my plan is to think about this for the rest of my life, and then I'll get to it. No, you got to deliver. So that's the execution. So maybe 1, you could say strategy. Number 2 is execution. And number 3, you have to do the right thing. So if you just do number 1 and just plan, and you're not efficient, you never get anything done. If you just do number 1 and number 2, you could be a sociopath, because you do things efficiently and you have a plan, but you don't care about people. So you need some governor, you need some kind of speed limit. So those 3 things are things I used to tell students and when I was there. And it really is reassuring if you just go back to those 3 things. I got a plan, I'm going to try to execute it, and I got to be a good person in the process. That's it. And inherent in that is what Dr. Langer said, which is you're going to work hard at all 3 of those. You're going to work